Hey everyone, hope you guys are great. What an exciting time to be alive. We are going to take a look at the state of the hive as we are in metamorphosis. And Pluto is on the world axis. There is so much transmutation going on. People are awakening across the globe, and we are going to actually see this shift in the world mentally, spiritually, physically. So we're going to take a look at this trajectory the next few months ahead, as well as the election. This video is going to be in two parts. The first part is an overview of the autumnal equinox to the winter solstice. So it's an overview of this period of time and what the world axis has to tell us. That's September 22nd to December 21st of this year. And then the second part, and I'll probably put the time so people can just go to that. That will be taking a look at the election, the charts of Biden and Trump, also a peek into winter solstice and beyond, where are all these energies taking us. Remember that we are working with the Uranian system, the 90-degree dial, or the fourth harmonic, which is the harmonic that represents the square, and the square represents manifestation. So through these planetary symmetries, through the midpoint structures, we are literally seeing the resonance and vibration as manifested in the world. So to see what's happening and manifesting on our planet and in the collective consciousness, we consult the Aries axis, which is also referred to as the world axis or the cardinal point, which is the hive. It is the inner and outer workings of the collective, and it's the state of mankind at any given moment. So when we look at the cardinal ingresses, which are the equinox and solstice charts, these are the seasonal charts, this gives us a blueprint for the state of the hive, the earthly and global matters for the preceding 3 months. Most importantly, through looking at these midpoint structures on the world axis and sensitive points and planetary pictures, we can see the information from the universe that's being received by humanity as part of its evolution. Okay, moving right into the fall equinox, and if you'll notice on the Aries axis or world axis is that we have Pluto. We also have Capito and the Sun Aries point. Why this is important is because all roads lead through these planetary energies on this main axis. So any of the other midpoint structures that you see are all moving through these points. Pluto is the soul. And Pluto on the world axis here is the evolution of the collective soul. With Pluto in Capricorn, we are watching one of the biggest power transfers in the history of mankind. The power and the destiny of man are being given back to we the people. Pluto represents change. These are major turning points, and what we're all about to see and be a part of, in the words of Jeffrey Green, the evolutionary astrologer, is cataclysmic change, a cataclysmic evolution of the world and the world view. It's cataclysmic because you have oppositional forces, one that resists change and one that represents the future. And when the evolutionary force becomes stronger than the resisting force, the result is cataclysmic change. I have always said in talking about this shift of consciousness that is upon us with people, that it will neither be left, it won't be right, it won't be centrist, it's not going to be compromise, it's going to be something that we cannot even possibly imagine, that is good for all and ends all of this suffering on this living planet. And that is what we're at the doorway of. And that is what these two campaigns represent on every level. Now, it's important here to go back to Winter Solstice 2019. Winter solstice charts are critical because they are the beginning of the solar cycle. So December 21st, 2019 to December 21st, 2020, every year. And they give us a glimpse of the social order. What is actually transpiring on a political level, the social milieu, the zeitgeist for the coming year. So in this chart, as you can see, Pluto was on the world axis with Capito and Poseidon, indicating that this year would be a shift in the world view, a complete ideological shift. This is an intellectual and spiritual development, and it is also, with the Capito, a coming together and a formation of new groups, new communities, new organizations of like minds and shared ideals, and this similar faith and outlook. So there's this real intellectual and spiritual connection. So this chart is telling us, this is the year overview, what would be happening. And we are here now. And you're seeing, feeling, and experiencing the collective consciousness's choice to evolve or remain. Do we remain attached, dependent, and enslaved to a system that robs us of our energy, our divinity, and leaves us disconnected from source, but it's stable and secure? Do we remain in a system that farms and manipulates our precious energy through psyops and technology and artificial intelligence? Or do we evolve and move onto a new frontier of soul sovereignty and heart-centered consciousness, where we are all given the time, the resources, and the space to develop ourselves and our potential, and to use our God-given skill sets for the greater good? We are in an evolutionary cycle of life, and it is not going to happen. Remember, Pluto is cataclysmic, and the magnitude of the event or events is that you will see people waking up all over the world. This is the doorway of the revolution and freedom in the world, and everyone will eventually be freed from their systems of control. Yes, even the Chinese. The whole world eventually will move into this new paradigm of service to humanity. But the seeds of this are happening here in the United States, and the power is coming back to the people. Remember, in this nation's chart, the North Node is in Leo and the South Node is in Aquarius. So this country is always meant to take a leading role, and the world will follow. We've always been known for ingenuity. And so here we have the power coming back to the people, and we can even see this Chronos Vulcanus with the Uranus Pluto in this 3-point picture. Indicates major political development and change and readjustment worldwide. Mercury Zeus Vulcanus, we have a restructuring and a discussion of new ideas and goals. This can also be laws and decrees, nefarious and beneficial changes happening in terms of that. It could be that a lot of these mandates begin to be overturned that were nefariously started in the first place. And so Pluto in Capricorn stirs up issues of power, government, authority, autonomy, the misuse and abuse of powers. And this in turn is a catalyst for the complete transitioning and restructuring of our economic and financial systems, our political parties, the way we govern, our social and moral values, and a complete transformation of the laws and legislations that lack integrity. So Pluto brings us to the brink of change as imbalances of power are shown to us in our lives. And this Plutonian energy evokes this change by, how Jeffrey Green puts it, futility and frustration. And that eventually is what causes these cataclysms. When we give over our power for emotional and stability needs, when we rely on the government, our politicians, the corporations, our search engines to make our life safe without any critical thought, we hand over our power, which equals the loss of autonomy and the ability to control and direct our lives. And so eventually futility and frustration are going to set in, and the whole relationship is going to fall apart. It's going to implode. So we are at this critical mass point, and all of these old structures that we've pledged allegiance to are going to fall away, and they're going to be destroyed. Neptune Hades tells us about major deception. So many ambiguities and efforts to deceive the world. There is uncertainty, anxiety, feelings of deprivation and hopelessness. But Neptune Hades is also an incredibly humanitarian combination, or help from other ancient civilizations, such as galactic energy. Because altruistic Neptune uses her services to help others in need. And right now, the whole world is in that need. Neptune Hades also, in Alfred Witta's words, and with the Pluto, is the beginning of decay and rotting. And so we are in this transitional phase, and you're literally watching the decay and rotting of the shadow government and their efforts to control and herd and cull humanity through many nefarious tactics. The virus narrative, and I'll call it the Kung Flu, artificial intelligence, technology. But what you're about to see about the system is that it is going to be a categoric failure, and you're going to see this shift of consciousness toward the light. And as I said in the summer solstice about there being another Kung Flu wave in the fall, and that I felt the more likely situation was that the infection is the deception and not the virus, which is turning out to be the case. And even though you're seeing an uptick in cases, I'm telling you this is deception and fraud. And that before everyone gets their panties in a wad, yes, the virus is real, but it's not the monster you think it is. And in fact, it's very weak at this point, similar to a garden variety flu. And so the truth will come to light, particularly as Poseidon and Zeus make a beeline to the world axis simultaneously. And they reach that point around the beginning of February. And we also have Mercury, Poseidon on the world axis at the winter solstice. These are both telling us that we're gaining truth and clarity on the situation. The Poseidon Zeus on the world axis in January, February is telling us we're actually getting proof. So my feeling is that this whole Kung Flu thing is just going to fall apart, and there'll likely be no vaccine. Or one that's barely implemented. My feeling is that it's just going to eventually disappear on its own. Again, the infection is the deception, not the virus. And as more people see this truth, we won't need to project illness because the root cause will be found, which is a nefariously aligned intention against humanity. As a matter of fact, the Neptune Hades with the Pluto can actually be a bettering or improvement of an infection or illness, or the deception at this point. Now, there can be more nefarious tactics to try to shut and lock people down, obstacles, suppression, a real bottleneck of energy, especially as we have the Saturn and Mitos conjunction on the world axis as we get into mid-November to mid-December. And it could also be talking about a stabilization and a final ending to the shadow's attempted takeover of humanity. All of these things are coming cascading out. Still, it can also be telling us about those still fully immersed in the Kung Flu narrative. And this is the deeper meaning of the Neptune Hades in the Equinox chart, where there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, anxiety as these lockdown mask mandates become deemed unconstitutional, which I believe they will, and people finally find themselves naked in a maskless world, and they need to deal with all of these stresses and anxieties. And again, this reflects this resistance to the evolutionary change by preferring to stay in the safety and stay in the past. So that's why Trump's personal chart is so interesting right now, because you can see through the planetary pictures that he is also in the process of developing a strong attunement and sensitivity to others and releasing those valuation issues from his ego. And there are many others who are doing this humanitarian work as well. Take the digital warriors, who are exposing the corruption through social platforms, helping others to understand the deception because the media is no longer a choice because it's compromised. So Pluto needs you to see all of this because it is through the awareness combined with the reflection and the critical thinking that actually is what creates the deep mental, physical, and emotional changes. But Neptune Hades is not known for clarity, and there are a lot of people who are so inured, they're so accustomed to the difficulty, they're so dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it no matter how tired and lonely and depraved. Because to admit the deception opens up a Pandora's box that your entire reality is not what you think it is. And when people finally awaken to the depth and the vastness of the deception and how it infiltrates literally everything, our collective external reality will then change. And I spoke about this at the summer solstice. The universe is not going to allow cognitive dissonance anymore because it is this resistance that blocks the potential for the change. And Pluto is going to break that dam. And it's going to start here in the United States. And I do predict Trump to win the election. Trump is representing the new frontier, evolution, and Biden's representing the past. But again, here are the ambiguities and deception of Neptune Hades. Everyone is feeling the futility and the frustration and the uncertainty and the ambiguities. But there's so much projection going on. There's so much emotion in the collective unconscious. Perfect example, because many people believe Trump is the evil one, and that is part of the illusion and the 24/7 poisoning of people's minds from the mainstream media, the government, your politicians, the search engines, when actually what is happening is a projection of the shadow government onto Trump. They are doing exactly the things they accuse Trump of. So things are not as they appear. Especially with Neptune, Hades, Pluto, such deception. What appears nefarious is benevolent, and what appears benevolent is nefarious. And the moon Uranus with the Hades and the Neptune, and there's Saturn in there too. If we put the pointer on the moon, you'll see this tight semi-square to Saturn. So the moon and Saturn go everywhere together. So back to the 3-point picture, what this is telling us is that through the emotional discomfort, through the tension, through the disruptions and the uncertainty, the instability, we're also having intuitive insights with the Neptune, and we need to carefully evaluate these. This energy is exceedingly helpful in deciphering things realistically, in terms of the way something looks versus the way it actually is. So this theme of coming to grips with the way reality actually is and not what you're being fed weaves itself throughout this chart, and it's a big one because this is an invisible war. With Chiron too, we have this structure around Saturn, Neptune with the moon. It's telling us about the uncertainty, the instability, the gap between the way something looks as opposed to the way it actually is. And for those who have awakened to these truths, Chiron, the wounded healer with the Saturn, Neptune, would mean helping others to see into their fears and into their anxiety so that they may be released. I just want to go through one last structure before we move on to the election and the candidates. Mars in Mitos means special operations or special ops that are going on, both sides, nefarious or benevolent. And Mitos specializes because it can go deeply into something. And so we can have with the Mars great persistence, perseverance, and stamina. And this is an invisible war, and it is mostly being fought in the media, in the cyber world, social platforms. It's so it's going to be, total WrestleMania. This is an ideological, spiritual war, and the Pluto will break down conditions and change things. With the Jupiter, it can have an expansive effect on the operations, both nefarious or beneficial. And Jupiter tends more toward the positive. So I would say you're going to see both for sure, but the light will win out. The Jupiter here also tells us something about legal matters going on. But the Mars in Mitos on the whole, I think it also speaks to this very slow shift of the energy trajectory of the collective toward the light. If you look at the sign of Admetos, it is the earth or the sign of Taurus with the cross of matter or spirit and body through it. The moon is on top and it's really heavy and receptive and absorbing. And so what Admetos is telling us is that through this deep and steady processing and reflection, we can begin to overcome the past. And for those who are awakened, we continue our specialized work with humanity and continue to plow through that density.